Hello, hello, and welcome to episode 113 of the Compassion and Cucumbers podcast. I'm Christine.
And I'm Sam.
And I think we jinxed ourselves by talking about not getting sick since we've been vegan, because I now have a terrible cold. I'm finally getting over it. It's been about 4 or 5 days now.
Yeah, you started feeling bad on Wednesday.
Yeah. So I think we totally jinxed ourselves.
Yes, I fortunately have been staving it off.
Yeah.
So far, as soon as Christine started feeling sick, I started in with oxalococcinum and Zicam and elderberry and loads of vitamin C. And I've been trying to keep it at bay.
So far, so good.
So far, so good.
Yeah, so fingers crossed we stay healthy for our trip to
London.
VegFest UK.
That's right. Don't want to mess with that.
Yeah, we leave on Thursday, and VegFest UK takes place this weekend. Should be a blast and a half.
It's going to be a blast and a half, no question.
Yeah, what else have we been up to? I've just not been up to much because I've been sick. So
no, and I've just been doing the work thing, and my high point of my week was really, kind of Friday and Saturday, getting together with a bunch of my former students in different ways, shapes, and forms.
Yeah.
And I had some serious proud mama moments.
Yeah, Sam used to call her students her ducklings because
you started that.
Did I start it?
You started
because
that.
some of her favorite students, they kind of follow her around like little ducklings. It's so funny.
Not so much anymore, but back in the day.
They're full-grown ducks now.
They are.
Yeah.
They are full-grown ducks. They are amazing.
Yeah.
And just so smart and so talented and just doing really good things in the world. And it's pretty awesome to see.
Yeah, I mean, as a teacher, that's what you do it for, right?
That's it right there.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's awesome.
Pretty amazing.
That's awesome. Well, let's jump into this thing. We have some things we want to talk about. And like I always say, I don't want to run long. So let's not run long.
Well, I mean, especially given that you're not feeling your best.
I'm really not. And I do apologize if I sound a little nasally. I'll try and fix it in post.
You're going to fix it in post?
I won't be able to fix it.
You won't be able to fix it in post.
I'll try not to be too sniffly and all that jazz. Oh, a little bit of an update. We wanted to update you on Wayne Hsiung, who is still in jail and will be until the 30th, at least until the 30th, when his sentencing hearing occurs. If you didn't hear last week's episode, we talked about how Wayne was found guilty in his right to rescue trial and now is in jail, and he is communicating through he has a blog, so he's sending handwritten letters out to somebody and they're posting them on his simpleheart.org blog. And I thought it might be nice just to share his letter from jail. Would you like to read it, Sam, since I'm so nasally?
I would love to.
Thank you.
So this is, of course, coming from Wayne Hsiung via the blog at simpleheart.org. Being close to suffering changes us. I saw this from the moment I first walked into a slaughterhouse 16 years ago. A little lamb looked up at me from her pen. She was shaking and said to me with her eyes, "I'm scared. I don't want to die." As I watched her, the world suddenly became very dark. My new life as a convict has begun, and I am near suffering again. This time, it is me in a cage. Surrounding me are people in their worst moments of life. There is a young man smashing his hands and feet against the tall walls as he screams for help from some unknown terror. There is a middle-aged person muttering in Spanish as he leans over and digs his head into his hands. In 3 hours, he has not bothered to look up. And there's a red-headed teenager with bloodshot eyes and face who looks as if he will break down in tears. He cannot be much older than 18. The world has once again become very dark. For the indefinite future, I'll have to accept that change. But there is another change that comes from being close to suffering. Wherever there is suffering, there is also light. I saw that in the little lamb's eyes 16 years ago. Even as she scrambled away in terror, she showed me her desperation, her hope, her willingness to fight. And I see it in the inmates in this Sonoma County jail. The world has forgotten them, but they still fight. Scrounging together funds for bail, piecing together a legal defense, doing whatever it takes to be free. The desperation of suffering casts a great shadow. It is the nightmare of every sentient being. But the struggle against suffering creates a light greater than the shadow. Indeed, that light is piercing and powerful precisely because it's born from the dark. For 16 years, I have tried to come closer to suffering. I have seen things that no one should have to see. But there is a difference between seeing and being. To be truly transformed, I cannot just be near suffering. I must be suffering. I cannot just observe suffering. I must experience it. It is the only path to true understanding, wisdom, and change. There is a theory in cognitive science that all human thought comes from metaphor. According to the theory, our minds are unable to understand anything beyond our own experiences. All other thoughts and feelings are just comparisons, metaphorical replications for something we've personally experienced. I think this theory goes too far. Humans can think about abstractions such as math that have no connection to any experience, but it still captures essential truths. Part of the reason I don't just know, but feel and understand the plight of animals is that I have been trapped and terrorized myself. As a child, I was bullied so mercilessly that I sometimes shook in fear before stepping onto the school bus. I withheld from my family for years the cause of the scratches and bruises on my body and face. But because of these experiences, I could be transported in an instant to the suffering of animals. I felt it, and that metaphorical connection was a source of not just fear, but motivation and fight. I know the terror of confinement and the liberation of being back with the people I loved. For that reason, my childhood torment was a gift. It gave me wisdom that I otherwise would have lacked. Yet that childhood suffering pales in comparison to the torment inflicted on animals today. The violence I faced was intense, but brief. It did not leave me physically broken or disfigured, other than a faint scar on my left lip. I had a caring family to come home to, a best friend, a lab mutt named Vivian, who loved me more than I thought it was possible to love. The animals facing systemic abuse have no such comforts. They suffer alone, in the dark, where no one will hear their cries. And as the brilliant writer Andy Greenberg once put it, this is the dominant experience on Earth today. The average experience of a sentient being on this planet is the life of a factory-farmed animal in a cage. I have suffered in life, but I don't truly understand this experience. I was not torn from my mother's arms as a child. I was not forced to fight for food and water and watch as those around me were cannibalized. And I was not trapped in a cage and denied the freedom that is the birthright of every sentient being. Until now. The coming weeks, months, or years will bring me closer to suffering, to the dominant experience on Earth today than I've ever been before. I can already see that this will change me. The petty resentments and frustrations I felt just days ago are gone. They've been consumed by the darkness of this place. But in suffering, there is both darkness and light. Every sentient being yearns to be free. I can see that, feel that, because of the light cast by my own captivity. This is the fight of my life, but it has always been the fight of their lives, too. I will soon come closer to that wisdom and truly understand. The dominant experience on Earth is that of an animal in a cage, and it's time for that to change.
Wow. Right?
Yeah.
He included in his handwritten letter a small drawing of his cell, which is interesting. He is in a solitary cell by himself. Mm-hmm. So he has a lot of time to think and right, which can be both a good thing and a bad thing. Another thing he included was a picture of 2 little fruit flies that he's made friends with in his cell. So technically, he's not really alone.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, we wish Wayne the best and sending out really good thoughts for his sentencing.
Yes. And of course, should Wayne issue further letters from his imprisonment, we'll be sure to...
Yeah, we'll share them.
Share them with you.
Yeah, because I think they should be shared.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Now, we did talk about where we're going to be next already, which is VegFest UK, London Olympia National, on November 18th and 19th.
Heck yeah.
But we wanted to let you know that we're not sure that we will have a new episode on Tuesday, November 21st, as we will be across the pond.
Yeah, we can't cart all of our podcast equipment with us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But we are going to post a replay of one of our holiday episodes, and that will be a replay of episode 65, which is navigating a non-vegan world during the holidays. So I think there's some good information in that episode that people can use and put into practice for their upcoming holiday gatherings.
Sounds good.
Yeah. So check that out. And of course, we will do a drop in and say hello before the episode and all that jazz.
Absolutely.
Don't forget to follow Sam's Etsy site, Cucumber Craftworks. Now, last week we said we would get some photos of some new merchandise up on the site. Because of my impending doom, aka this cold I'm trying to get over.
Don't you love how a cold is impending doom? Do you get an idea of what I put up with?
It's not like I have the man flu or something. Anyway, we didn't get the photos up, so we'll let you know when that happens. But check out Sam's Etsy site, Cucumber Craftworks, and be sure and follow the store.
There you go. Also a reminder that Hoodies for the Homeless 716 is once again accepting donations of gently used hoodies and other warm clothing. Donations can be dropped off at Wellness in the Village at 13219 Broadway in Alden, New York, or at the State Farm Insurance Office at 209 Main Street in East Aurora.
I believe they have now a third drop-off location.
Oh, really?
Yeah, their new drop-off location is in Clarence, New York. It's at Yoga at the Locker at 9992 Main Street in Clarence, New York.
Awesome.
Yeah, so if you're in the area, be sure and drop off any gently used hoodies or warm clothing.
Cool. And that brings us to our recipe of the week.
Hey, we do have a recipe of the week.
And this one just happens to be from our vegan kitchen.
This week's recipe from our vegan kitchen is my easy, cheesy, vegan herb garlic bread.
Now, when Christine has a cold, she also develops an even greater craving for carbs than she usually has.
I don't know why.
And her craving for carbs is pretty significant to begin with. She's one of those people who, if you gave her nothing but bread and vegan cheese for the rest of her life, she'd be just fine.
I would be. I don't know if it's in my heritage, bread and cheese, I don't know. I like carbs.
Yeah.
Yeah. I made rice, then I made pasta
and bread.
And I remade this recipe just tonight. Yeah. So yeah, this is a fun recipe and an easy recipe because this is like a weeknight thing.
Right.
But it doesn't really taste like a weeknight thing.
No, it tastes kind of special.
Yeah, the easy thing about it is you use store-bought pizza dough.
There you go.
Okay, that saves you so much time. There's no raising
of
dough. There's no making of dough.
Right.
And and then you can just cut it up into breadsticks. We had it with a big salad tonight. Mm-hmm. It was pretty good.
It was.
Yeah.
Super
I
good.
think I left it in the oven just a little too long this time. It was too crunchy for my taste.
Yeah, it was a little bit overdone.
Yeah.
The loaf that you did last week
was much better.
Yeah. Like it was fabulous.
Yeah. But that's good. I'm going to adjust the time on the written recipe, and you can get that full written recipe on our Patreon page. It's up there for our Patreon community. And if you make any of the recipes on our Patreon page, if you are a patron, please reach out or message us on Patreon and let us know how they turned out for you.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Because I'd like to know.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And I am still working on an e-cookbook.
Mm-hmm.
Still, tinkering with that and stuff. And some of the recipes on our Patreon page will also be in the ebook. So if you don't want to become a patron, eventually you'll be able to get your hands on those recipes in our e-cookbook.
Super cool.
Whenever I get my act together and get that released.
Yeah, it'll take some time.
Yeah.
Ebooks don't happen overnight.
No, I got to get my poop in a group, as they say.
What did you just say?
Got to get my poop in a group.
Your poop in a group? Really? Okay, that's new to me. I've never heard that before.
I thought it was fun. I heard somebody say that and I thought it was funny.
Okay, well, that's a really awesome segue into our Noteworthy section.
That's what I thought.
That's just crazy. In this week's Noteworthy section, coming from sentientmedia.org, we note that poop from mega dairies is ending up in drinking water, according to drone footage.
Yeah, you heard that right.
I don't think you'd want to drink that, said Arlen Carnop of the brown-tinged water inside the jam jar in front of him. Government testing has revealed the water sample taken from his kitchen sink is contaminated with nitrates and E. coli. Carnop says that when he married his wife, Mary Lou, they built what was to be their dream home in Kewaunee County, Wisconsin. More than 5 decades later, the couple now has a sign outside that reads Grandma and Grandpa's house. In recent years, the land around them has changed too. Bigger dairy farms have sprung up, and more of them, some housing thousands of cows. They say it's a family farm, Arlen Carnop told animal welfare advocacy organization Mercy for Animals, but he's skeptical, pointing to the sheer number of employees and cattle. Now, new drone footage documented by the nonprofit confirms his suspicions. Their neighbor is a dairy farm with hundreds of dairy cows that stores manure in huge liquid lagoons. Another neighboring factory farm holds more than 1,000 calves not yet old enough to become impregnated for milking. The new aerial drone footage shows more than a dozen different industrial dairy farms in central and eastern Wisconsin, with a combined total of 28 manure lagoons.
Wow.
According to a Mercy for Animals representative. It reveals massive pits filled with a brown sludge, a mixture of animal waste and water. The tractors dumping into the pools appear toy-like in comparison. In many cases, vats of manure are directly next to the barns housing approximately thousands of dairy cows producing milk, all kept mostly indoors other than brief trips to and from the milking parlor. Touted as America's dairyland by its own lawmakers in the 1940s, Wisconsin has long been famous for its dairy industry. While small-scale farmers were the norm for decades, the industry is now highly consolidated. At the end of January, the state was home to 1.27 million dairy cows on just over 6,000 farms.
That's unbelievable. In one state, 1.27 million dairy cows.
Including 630,000 heifers, female dairy cows who haven't given birth or produced milk yet. That many cows produces a lot of manure, 65 pounds a day each, or roughly 12 tons a year. On top of that, every cow eliminates roughly 3.5 gallons of urine each day. Some annual estimates put manure from U.S. livestock at between 1.27 and 1.37 billion tons of waste, at least 3 times what all people in the U.S. are flushing. All of that waste has to go somewhere, and it can only be applied for crops at a certain time in the planting season. Until then, it has to be stored.
Let's just stop there for a moment and reread that. All of that waste has to go somewhere, and it can only be applied for crops at certain times in the planting season. This brings us back to that episode where we were talking about how your produce is being covered in E. coli.
Yes. The most common solution on factory farms massive open-air cesspools filled with thousands of gallons of slurry composed of waste and water. As the vats age, they often start to crack, allowing the toxic mixture inside to seep out and make its way into the groundwater, upon which residential wells rely. Eventually, families living nearby, like the Carnops, turn on their faucets to find polluted brown liquid. Now, Carnop and his wife have to buy gallons and gallons of clean water for their family. Everything we cook comes from bottled water, says Mary Lou Carnop.
Yeah, that's a huge problem that most people in rural communities rely on wells
Yes.
for water. And where are all of these factory farms? In rural communities.
Yes.
So all of their water is being poisoned.
Well, it's certainly being endangered.
Yeah. Not only by this sort of a thing, but by runoff from pesticides and, everything in the industrial farming industry. It's really hard to believe in this day and age that people can still even use well water.
Yes. Drone footage also reveals rows upon tidy rows of white hutches for housing calves, some visibly squeezed into their tiny enclosures. In 2022, Wisconsin had a calf crop of 1.4 million animals per U.S. Department of Agriculture data. Immediately after birth, calves are separated from their mothers and housed separately. One of two fates awaits them. If they are female, they are likely to be raised to replace their mothers or grandmothers as the older cows' bodies break down under the pressures of inordinately high milk production, usually by 6 years old. Or they could be sold for meat, often as part of the veal industry. The type of veal they will become determines how long the calves will live, though none of them will make it to puberty before being slaughtered.
Yeah, and if you've ever driven by one of those large veal farms, calf farms, it's heartbreaking.
It's heartbreaking.
Yeah.
I think we mentioned when we were heading out to Mockingbird Farm
they're surrounded by a number of large dairy and calf
farms
facilities.
Yes, and just seeing the rows upon rows of hutches, and every now and again you'd see just a nose peeking out, a little nose of a calf, or you'd see one just like dart out into this tiny enclosure.
Yeah, they have like a little fence around the hutch.
Just absolutely heartbreaking. And seeing all of those hutches and knowing that in each and every one of them there is a baby cow.
Yeah.
It's heart-wrenching.
Yeah.
For the Carnops, their main concern is the health and well-being of their family, especially their grandchildren. On the weekends when they visit, Arlen and Mary Lou Carnop don't let them use the water from the faucets, not even to wash their faces, offering them wipes instead. There is evidence to support their cautious behavior. Drinking water that contains E. coli, which has already been confirmed in the samples from their faucets, can in some cases cause diarrhea, respiratory illnesses, and blood infections, according to the Centers for Disease Control. The high levels of nitrates in their water are also dangerous. Some studies link prolonged exposure to toxic levels of nitrates with higher rates of miscarriage and some types of cancer. We have to make sure we always have water. We can't run out because we can't just turn the faucet on, Mary Lou Carnop says. We shouldn't have to live like this.
No, nobody should have to live like that, including the animals that are involved in those operations.
Yes.
And I'm curious to see how many more drone investigations there are out there, because it seems like a really effective tool in this type of investigating to really see what's going on.
Yeah.
Get a good aerial view of people's areas to see what's going on. And I hope that's something that they don't start to ban.
Well, that's what I was just thinking.
Right. They're going to start banning the airspace above factory farming locations.
It would not surprise me at all.
It wouldn't surprise me at all if it's not already a law.
Yeah, I don't know.
I can tell you I had family members that lived in a rural area that also relied heavily on well water.
Sure.
And almost that entire family is gone from cancer. I lost an aunt, an uncle, and my cousin, all to different types of cancer. And I'm almost certain it's because of the water they were drinking for most of their lives.
There you have it.
Yeah. I mean, there's no proof of that, but
No, not direct conclusive proof, but,
right.
Anecdotal evidence.
Certainly anecdotal evidence, but
So it's just another thing that we, need to be aware of and concerned about regarding factory farming.
yeah, I mean, of course, we're always talking about how factory farming affects the animals and how terrible it is for them. But here's just another case of how it's affecting people that aren't even involved in the industry.
Right.
Yeah.
And
a lot of times these farms are put in not only rural, but poor communities.
Yes. Yes. And frequently communities of color.
Yeah.
Yeah.
People that don't have the resources to hire a lawyer or fight for their rights to breathe clean air, drink clean water.
Yeah.
It's terrible. And with that, we will move on to our main topic. And this week's main topic is the Farm Bill. Now, we've been talking about the Farm Bill and how you should join the Vegan Voter Hub and how the AFA is in Washington, D.C., lobbying for the upcoming Farm Bill, which was to be voted on in September. What is it now? It's November.
It is November.
And they don't think that this Farm Bill is going to see any sort of action until at least 2024. So I found this article that came from civileats.com, where animal welfare advocates are talking about wanting a say in the next Farm Bill, and we know we want a say in the next Farm Bill.
So the 2018 Farm Bill expired on September 30th, and it doesn't seem likely that the House and Senate will have drafts of the new bill before the end of the year. But that doesn't make the once every 5-year piece of legislation any less important. This time around, animal welfare groups have even stepped up their efforts to shape the bill. The nonprofit Farm Sanctuary, the first shelter for farm animals, is among the groups that has spent the past couple years calling for substantial reforms to the Farm Bill as part of a growing recognition that animal and human rights are connected. Animal-centered organizations have both an ethical responsibility to include and elevate impacts for people and the planet. And we have a tactical responsibility, too, says Aaron Rimmler-Cohen, Farm Sanctuary's advocacy director.
If you're not familiar with Aaron Rimmler-Cohen, he has the coolest, nicest face.
He does have a great face.
Just Google it. Google image Aaron Rimmler-Cohen from Farm Sanctuary. He just looks like a guy you want to know.
He just has the kindest eyes.
Yeah.
And just a great smile. Yeah, he's an amazing face.
Yeah.
So true. So one of the major concerns when it comes to the 2023 Farm Bill is gridlock. That political gridlock is threatening the process of passing the Farm Bill.
Yeah. So how does Aaron say that gridlock is going to impact the upcoming Farm Bill?
Well, he says that it's really important that there is a robust and vigorous debate over what a farm bill should do and how it can best support families, farmers, communities, animals, people, and the planet. And that debate, because of gridlock, is not getting that. It's just the can is being kicked down the road. It's as though gridlock is just a really good way of avoiding conversations that need to happen. He says that this is very reminiscent of the Merrick Garland 2016 Supreme Court nomination, when the Republicans kicked the can down the road and eventually waited until the next presidential election to pick a Supreme Court nominee. If we have the same thing happen with the Farm Bill, then Donald Trump, if reelected, could sign 2 consecutive farm bills in 2018 and 2025.
That would be bad.
That would be bad. We need a robust public debate, but we also need to make sure we get a farm bill across the finish line.
What's so important about the Farm Bill, according to Aaron?
Well, on the one hand, there is critical nutrition support for over 40 million American families and American consumers. The proposed Gus Schumacher Nutrition Incentive Program Expansion Act, which would build on the program that we have to grow the purchasing power for fruits and vegetables under the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, is amazing. but we have to better use those programs to nourish more people, to advance health equity, and to support farmers who are growing crops that nourish our communities in the process. So that's 75% of the Farm Bill right there, that nutrition spending. Then you have the other 25%, which is predominantly commodities, crop insurance, and farm conservation programs. And what that funding does is it skews the entire food system through cheap, publicly subsidized credit to grow predominantly feed crops for animals or ethanol fuel. Then you've got 70% of the crop insurance subsidies going to the largest farms in the top 7%, and most of them are growing corn and soy.
Yeah, and this is exactly what Connie Spence and the AFA are lobbying to move towards.
Yes.
Have those monies be more equitably transferred into programs that pay smaller farmers to grow better food, not feed crops,
Right.
Not GMO corn,
Not GMO soy.
Yeah. So that is what they're focusing on. We can't go into lobbying on the Farm Bill as like a fight for the animals. It's not what politicians understand. They don't understand. They will tune you out every time.
Right.
They want to talk about numbers.
Yeah.
And how it's going to affect farmers.
Yes.
Because that's what they're working on.
That's right.
And that is exactly what Connie is doing.
Absolutely. And is brilliant at.
Yeah. And so what I want to know, and I want to reach out to Connie and ask her, since this bill is taking so long to be passed, and I know that the House and the Senate did have a comment period where constituents could, and we did, send in specific forms filled out as to how you would like your legislators to vote on this bill. Mm-hmm. I'm wondering if that period has been extended.
It's an interesting question.
In any way, and I have to talk to Connie about that.
Yeah.
If this is a case where we should be reaching out to legislators and find out if that window's open and give them specific information on how we would like them to vote or what things we want in this bill.
Yeah.
So I'll reach out to Connie and we'll report back on if that's something that's possible, since this is going to take until at least 2024 now, they're saying. So, like I said, we'll report back on that.
Absolutely.
If the U.S. were to continue down the current trajectory and pass farm bills like those of the recent past, what does Erin say the food system of the future will look like?
Well, if we continue down the current path, there will be fewer farmers, greater consolidation, an accelerating climate crisis, and a worsening public health crisis, not to mention more animals living in even more consolidated industrialized conditions. Globally, food systems make up 1/3 of greenhouse gas emissions, but get 3% of public climate funding within the United States. According to the USDA, 85% of U.S. healthcare spending, which is about 1/6 of the U.S. economy, is related to diet-related diseases. So, food matters.
Yeah, indeed. Food definitely matters.
And to kind of summarize his view of the Farm Bill and where things are heading, Erin states, I think animal-centered organizations have both an ethical responsibility to include and elevate impacts for people and the planet. And we have a tactical responsibility too. You referenced our shift from ending animal agriculture to working for food systems that work for all of us. But in some ways, it's a theory of change. Ultimately, over the long term, we're going to end animal agriculture by building food systems that work for everybody, animals, people, and the planet. I really think that kind of inclusive, unifying message is one that the animal-centered movement could better use to build bridges to meet folks where they are, and to ultimately advance the progress that we care about for animals and the rest of us.
Yeah, so he kind of reiterates what I was just talking about there.
Yes.
That we can't go to politicians and say, talk about animal rights and all the things that we hold so dear to our hearts about sentient beings, because politicians just don't react well to that kind of stuff.
Well, no, it's just not a place where they don't see value in putting their focus there.
Yeah.
But if you're talking about sustainable food systems, if
Right.
you're talking about, where the money is going and how things are impacting the environment,
things that they can put into practice. Because believe it or not, most politicians do want to work for us.
Yeah.
It doesn't seem like that.
It doesn't,
but
really.
in their general day-to-day stuff, that's what they do. You know?
I hope so.
They want to hear things that they can take action on. Whether or not they're going to take the action that you want is one thing.
Sure.
But that's the kind of conversation they want to have.
Okay.
You know?
I hope so.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't have a lot of faith in politics.
Yeah, I don't either. Who does?
So I like that you're putting an optimistic spin.
I'm trying.
Yes, it's appreciated.
Yeah. So, like I said, I'll reach out to Connie Spence of the Agriculture Fairness Alliance and ask her if that comment period, if there's going to be any kind of extension on that, and if there is, how we can respond to legislators in a way that will make a difference.
That'd be awesome.
Hey, that brings us to our segment on how to become vegan.
Yeah, and this takes us back to sentient media. Today's helpful suggestion toward becoming vegan is veganism doesn't mean deprivation. Veganism is not about depriving ourselves of the foods we love. It's about changing how we look at animals. Once we see animals as independent living beings and not food, we create space to discover new plant-based foods and explore delicious options. People sometimes think that they will miss a lot of foods if they start living vegan, but there are so many plant-based alternatives to all of our favorite foods from different cultures around the world. Once you dive into the world of plant-based eating, the food opportunities are endless.
Yeah, and we've talked about that in the past, how when we went vegan, our food world kind of opened up a little.
It really did.
You know?
Yeah. And I know Christine in particular thought that there were going to be things that she would seriously miss. Cheese and eggs being...
Yeah, cheese and eggs.
The big things.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. That, she wasn't going to be able to make her cheesy scrambled eggs or, omelets on a Sunday morning or something
and then
like that.
Now I've discovered I much prefer a tofu scramble.
There you go.
To even any of the egg replacers.
Yeah.
So...
Yeah. There you go.
Yeah.
And, I haven't found anything really that I desperately miss.
No.
Like, absolutely nothing.
Me neither.
So, yeah, it really wasn't all that hard.
Yeah. So it's definitely not deprivation.
No.
At least in our opinion.
Oh, certainly not.
Yeah.
Yeah. And honestly, I know it's a bit of a cliche, but I know there's a t-shirt out there that says anything you can eat, I can eat vegan.
Mm-hmm. If you would like that t-shirt, you can get that at Compassion Co.
There you go.
Go to CompassionCo.com. Not sponsored by Compassion Co.
No, not even close. But it's absolutely true that anything that has animal products in it can be created in just as delicious and just as satisfying form with all plants.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a wonderful time to be alive.
It really is.
And
it's a wonderful time to be vegan.
Yep. Uh-oh. Guess what?
Oh, wait. Every time you say uh-oh, it can only be listener shout-out time. Like we should be worried. Oh, no. It's listener shout-out time.
I don't know why I say uh-oh.
I don't either. But, you get worried about listener shout-out time.
I don't know why.
Oh, my God. Oh, no. It's listener shout-out time.
Well, so much for all that build-up. It's time for our listener shout-out.
Just want to give a shout-out to all my fans watching. I love you guys. I love you.
This week's listener shout-out goes to Jim Thompson. Jim is vegan, volunteers for Vegan CNY, and is very active in his community. We met Jim at Syracuse Veg Fest, where his son Sam was a panelist. Thank you so much for listening, Jim.
Yeah, thanks for listening, Jim, and contact us with your t-shirt size and address so we can send you a CNC swag bag. You can send us that information by either emailing us at compassionandcucumbers@gmail.com or DM us on Instagram or private message us on Facebook or write it down on a letter. But no, don't write it down on a letter. Anyway, those are all the ways you can get that information to us. I think I'm a little punchy. I might need more cold meds.
Uh-oh.
Or fewer cold meds. I'm not sure.
I think it might be fewer cold meds. Yeah.
Hey, you want to get a listener shout out like Jim? Do all those things. Send us a DM or an email and let us know that you listen and tell us a little bit about yourself so we can shout you out.
Yeah, because we love doing that kind of thing. We really do.
We do. Even though I say, I don't know.
Seriously.
We do love doing it.
We really do. That brings us to our vegan org of the week. And this week we are highlighting the Afro Vegan Society. The mission of the Afro Vegan Society is to offer information, resources, and support to encourage and inspire people in marginalized communities to transition to vegan living. They have many resources on their website, from their dump dairy library to vegan meal planners. There's loads of useful information. They also have a Black vegan activist training program, recipes, and a vegan holiday resource page, and more. To support their work or to find out more about them, you can go to www.afrovegansociety.org.
Love them W's.
I know you do. I did that just for you.
It is time to wrap this sucker up.
Okay, then.
Let's wrap it up.
Go for it.
As always, we encourage you to join the AFA Vegan Voter Hub. We were just talking about the Farm Bill. We want your name on the Vegan Voter Hub so that when the AFA is in Washington lobbying, they can bring that list of Voter Hub members to the legislators in D.C. and say, look, you have this many vegan voters in Wisconsin. Let's do something about the dairy industry in Wisconsin. So support the AFA in any way that you can, be that monetarily or by simply joining, and sign up for the Vegan Voter Hub.
The link is always in the show notes.
It is.
Yes. Well, friends, you have just listened to episode 113 of the Compassion and Cucumbers podcast, and there's nothing left to say but where cukes and compassion are always the fashion on the podcast. Thanks, James.
Have a great week, everybody.
We'll talk to you next Tuesday.
We won't, but you'll hear us next Tuesday.
Won't. You'll hear us next Tuesday, but we won't actually be talking.
We'll talk to you a little bit.
A little bit.
But not for we'll talk to you. I need to take some medicine.
You need to go to sleep is what you need to do.
Anyway, we love you guys.
Yeah, we do.
Bye-bye.
The end.
If you'd like to support the Compassion and Cucumbers podcast, well, you can do that by hopping on over to our Patreon page and becoming a patron. We have all the recipes from our vegan kitchen series up there, and we'll be adding some patron-only episodes in the near future. So thank you for supporting us at whatever level that you choose, and thank you again for listening to Compassion and Cucumbers podcast.